of my deconversion. But let's go to, I think it's last in India.
Hello.
Hello.
And the last shall be first.
Weren't quite first, but you're up there. What's going on? What can we help you with?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay,
cool.
perfect.
So I have been part of the Discord for a while now, and I really enjoy the conversations I had here. So I thought, why not try calling?
Sure.
And one of the things that I've noticed is that most of the discussion, right, that happens online, and even in the the live sessions, right, they typically tend to focus on Abrahamic religions. Okay. So now, that was just a comment I wanted to make. But the biggest thing I wanted to talk about is what exactly is the epistemological take on the reliability of testimony, or how would you, talk about the reliability of testimony in the context of knowing something? So to assist the discussion, where I'm coming from is that I'm a theist, okay? So, and I believe strongly in being rigorous. And one of the things I've noticed is that we tend to restrict ourselves only to the epistemes of inference and perception, right?
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I didn't catch it.
I said typically, right, a rational person, or rather rationality itself is defined as sticking to the epistemes of inference and perception, right?
Inference and perception, okay.
Would you agree with that?
So I agree that that's what we do. I don't agree that's what we should do. So we live our lives primarily. We live our lives primarily by inference, and it's a pretty good thing because today's pretty much like yesterday.
Yeah.
And but that's about spotting a pattern and making an inference to what's likely to happen. I think abduction is something that we do as well. The arguing towards what is the best explanation is just that our arrogance gets in the way. On your question about testimony and the reliability of testimony.
Coming back, I have this thought experiment regarding the necessity of testimony even for scientific progress, right? And I would be interested to share it. So can I share that thought? And my question is basically to ask, if testimony is to be accepted as so this thought experiment basically tries to establish that testimony is an independent source of knowledge, right? And the question of knowledge, knowing something through testimony does not then boils down to the reliability of testimony, right?
No. So testimony gives you access to knowledge about what someone believes, but that's separate from the truth. So if somebody comes to me and says they were abducted by aliens, I'm willing to accept that they are. Okay. I'm willing to accept that they are honestly trying to give me their understanding of what happened, but I'm not willing to accept that their understanding is correct. So if somebody tells me last night I was visited by a ghost, I'm willing to accept that they had an experience that they are describing as I was visited by a ghost.
Right.
But their testimony is not sufficient to warrant the belief this person was in fact visited by a ghost.
So so let me explain the thought experiment, right?
Okay.
And because in the flow of that, I will be able to formulate my question better as well.
Okay.
So my thought experiment goes like this. So have you heard of this thing called the cosmic microwave background radiation?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So that is the primary evidence for the occurrence of the Big Bang, right? And what scientists have said is that in 500 million years from now, the cosmic microwave background radiation levels will drop below the resolution of any possible instrument that we could probably design, knowing the current laws of physics, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the people who live at that time will not have the same evidentiary warrant for the Big Bang model as we do.
They will not be able to practice inference and perception-based methods alone to know that the Big Bang happened.
Right.
And they would have to rely on written records or knowledge passed down through the ages to know that the Big Bang happened.
Yep.
Right? So in this case, scientific progress essentially depends on testimony rather than inference and perception in this scenario.
It depends on testimony only in the sense that here we have a number of people who are recording this was the observation at the time. There's actual data as well. The fact that someone at a future time is not able to confirm that data is a separate problem.
So you're saying that in that case, testimony is not useful?
No, I think it's useful. I just think that it wouldn't be conclusive. At some point in the future, if thinking beings continue to survive, they will not have evidentiary warrant to have the same understanding about universal origins that we have now. We are lucky in that sense.
So, so what I'm trying to say, okay, so in that sense, it seems like a more resigned answer to me, right? The reason I say that is because when we say that, we cannot depend on testimony as a valid source of knowledge, in this case, we're essentially restricting ourselves from making scientific progress even.
No. Well, we are, but we're not restricting ourselves. The facts of the universe are restricting us because the goal is to have confidence that you are correct and not incorrect. Let's say that, let's assume right now it is true I am having a conversation with you and you are calling from India. We'll just assume all those things to be correct. And let's say this recording is viewed by aliens on another planet in 1 billion years.
Hey, guys.
Hi. What they would have evidentiary warrant for is independent from what is in fact true. And the fact that they wouldn't have enough warrant to believe certain things is not a problem with our warrant, and it's not a problem with what is true. It is simply a fact about their point in time and what they do and don't have access to.
Okay, so in that sense, right? Okay, so if you put yourself in the shoes of that person, what you end up having is that, I am restricted from knowing certain facts of the universe.
Yep.
Because my methods of my methods of perception and inference are inadequate. And if I wish to know more about the universe, I have to rely solely on testimony, right?
No. That's where you've gone off the rails.
Okay. Yeah.
Once you get to the point where I don't have access to sufficient evidence to have an understanding of this, that's where you stop. You don't just get to say, now if I want to know more, I have to rely on testimony.
Okay.
You don't get to do that because you don't know more. There's no more epistemological warrant in that.
I don't know if there's no more epistemological warrant because what I feel is that that's more of a subjective thing than, it seems like that's an attitude that you're taking and not necessarily that everybody should be taking.
Well, I would argue it's an attitude that everybody should be taking because what you should be doing is proportioning your confidence level to the evidence. Mm-hmm. And if right now I have evidence that I'm having a conversation with you, in the future, all they will have is a recording, which could have been faked, could have been done in Hollywood. We could have staged all this. They could say, somebody could make all kinds of arguments about how we can't demonstrate that, you weren't a computer-generated voice because that technology might exist in the future. But would this conversation be sufficient on its own to conclude that there was a planet with humans and a TV show? Quite possibly, because none of those would be extraordinary claims. But when you're talking about something like cosmic microwave background radiation, which I would argue isn't necessarily the best evidence for, but a prediction made by the model, which was borne out by experiment and detection. And at some point in the future, people will not be able to conduct that experiment, and they'll be in a position where they either just trust that we did it right and that they have a good access to the data and the whole process, or they have to recognize there's not enough evidence for me now to be sufficiently confident. And then you have to stop there because when you don't have a method to become more confident, you don't get to go to a lesser method to increase your confidence.
Also,
that's the thing, right? Why do you say it's a lesser method? That is what I'm trying to understand. Because
somebody telling me something is lesser than me actually observing it and getting the data myself.
Why is that lesser?
I have $5,000 in my wallet. That's what I'm going to tell you. Do you believe me?
I don't know.
You don't know if you believe me? Bullshit. Do you believe me?
I don't know if you have $5,000.
Right. I'm not asking you that. I'm asking, do you believe my claim?
Well, I don't. Okay, so you're asking. That's a good point. I haven't thought about that. So let me just take a moment to think. So your question is, have I okay, if you tell me that you have $5,000 in your wallet, should I believe you or not?
Are you convinced? I just told you, I have $5,000 in my wallet. Are you convinced?
Well, this is something I can actually come and verify, right?
No.
Stop.
Stop. I am telling you right now,
okay, so...
Am I going to... I have $5,000 in my wallet. Are you convinced that that statement is true?
I am saying that it is something that can be verified. There is a hierarchy.
Oh my God. Would you just answer the question that I asked? Do you believe, based only on me telling you this is true, that it is true?
Well, I do not. Okay, no. And
thank you. Now, if I were to open my wallet and show you, would you believe then?
Yes.
That answers the question that you asked just a minute ago.
It doesn't. Because,
yes, it does. Let me finish.
You don't have to shout.
I don't have to talk to you either. Would you like me to?
No, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think
Go ahead, V.
Okay. We're going to let you go then. But thank you for calling in. I think another thing, and this is where I was having a problem with this, was clearly the argument was then going to flow into, well, we have testimony about gods. But those are two different things.
Yeah.
Like, you can say, okay, I had my 8-year-old write down that the Big Bang happened.
Right.
And then we can weigh that against all like hundreds of thousands of pages of research about whether or not it happened. The scale isn't going to be evenly tilted, right? Like, saying that we can trust to a certain extent testimony about one thing is dependent on how good that verification process is, whether or not it's been disproven in the past. And yes, of course, there's going to be a point in time where we maybe can't access certain things because it's far beyond our reach. We're dealing with that now. We are restricted in how we view the universe, just based on the fact that we are highly evolved apes. But yeah, equating scientific research of hundreds and hundreds of years at this point in time when things go away.
Well, the question was about whether or not there's whether or not a claim, testimony, is a lesser standard of evidence than direct observation. And I find it curious that I asked the question, would you believe me if I said this, based only on the claim? And everything that he wanted to do was, well, that's something I can verify. That's this, that's this. In every interruption, he's acknowledging the point that the direct observation is superior standard of evidence to being told about something. This is intrinsically obvious to anybody. And when I try to come up with a bare bones example, I'm going to tell you this. Do you believe it based on that alone? Well, I could verify it. Isn't this something that's verified? You're answering your own damn question. And when the entire point of the argument was about how reliable testimony is, and by the way, we have good evidence that eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable, and that the further removed you are from the event, the less reliable it becomes, because you're no longer remembering the event, you're remembering the last time you remembered the event or the last time you talked about the event, which is why we get fish tales about, I went fishing and I caught a fish that was this big. It's not just that that somebody's lying when they do that.
Oh, no. Yeah. A lot of the time they honestly believe it. And that's where the problem comes in.
We exaggerate, and we exaggerate to ourselves.
Yes, without a doubt. And I think the thing to take away from this is when there is nothing except for testimony, that doesn't mean that just because it's there, we have to now believe it because there's no other option. The other option is to reserve judgment and just say, I don't know and I can't know.
Yep. And lastly, the yelling. Sometimes there's a problem with the phones, especially when we're dealing with somebody calling on a cell phone, which isn't very good at full duplex or anything else. And so if I'm making a point and you're going to keep interrupting, then either I let you keep interrupting and the point doesn't get out, or I try to ramp it up a little bit. I'm not just yelling. It's not like I'm, it is not always the best method, and I try to do what I can, but I couldn't reach the mute button because I'm on the wrong side of the table and I'm not left-handed. There.